Hey y'all, I'm Dr. Lucretia Cook, but you can call me Dr. LaLa. Welcome to another episode of the Re3Volve podcast, where grief and loss are a journey, not a final destination. Um, I'm so happy to be here with you today. Our conversation today might get a little bit heavy, but I think it's necessary, right? So, the holiday season is coming up. I know, right? So, especially for you guys who have experienced loss, and this is your first holiday without your loved one, and what that can look like. And so, today, I want to give you a couple of permission slips because the truth is, it's different. You know, that first holiday without your loved ones can be a challenge. And I want you to know that it's okay to not be okay, right? For myself, it's been 5 years since my mom passed, and almost 10 since daddy passed. It's been right at 10 years since my daddy passed away. And during the holidays, it still gets hard sometimes, right? And that doesn't mean I'm not healed. That means I'm human, right? Because the reality is, when we lose someone, that grief that we experience is the price we pay for having been able to love them. And that's okay. I'm not saying that it'll ever be easy. I'm not saying that it'll ever get to the point where it won't hurt, but you'll get better at bearing it. And so today, I just want to help you get through this first holiday season without your loved one, right? I want to give you permission to operate at the capacity that you can handle, okay? Because sometimes just that little bit has to be enough. You know, that first Christmas after my mom passed away, it was hard. One of the things I normally love to do is put the Christmas tree up Thanksgiving weekend. The year mommy passed away, I didn't even get a tree put up that year. You know, my siblings and I, we actually wound up spending Christmas in Florida because it was mommy's turn to host Christmas, and she wasn't going to be there. And so we had a little meeting, and we decided, rather than try to handle business as usual, we decided to spend Christmas at the beach. That was completely outside of our norm, right? Because each year, since we've become adults, one of us will host the holiday. But that Christmas, it was mommy's turn. And so it was very much so out of the box for us to go to Florida. But honestly, I think it was probably one of the best things we could do because it got us outside of our norm, right? Because we were having to learn to live in our new normal anyway. So it was different, but getting away from the house for Christmas, it helped. Because I know sometimes when we're grieving, being joyful feels like betrayal, right? Because it's like, how can I be happy right now when a part of me is missing, right? And so it's hard to perform during the holidays, right? But something my therapist told me in this season is that grief rewrites our capacity, right? And so our emotional energy is kind of like a bank account. And when we're grieving, grief takes huge amounts from that account, right? So the things that are normally easy, like decorating, hosting for the holiday, baking, they become nearly impossible. And that doesn't make you a failure, right? It makes you human. because life is different, right? And it's okay for you to be honest with yourself and acknowledge that it doesn't feel good. I know it's the holiday season and I'm supposed to be happy, and there are parts of me that are, but there's a part of me that's sad. And you don't have to feel guilty about that, okay? Ecclesiastes 3:4 reminds us that there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. It doesn't say we have to rush to get to the dancing part, right? The scriptures give us permission. It tells us there's a time for mourning. And so you're allowed to give yourself time, because grief doesn't have a time limit, right? Because some days it might be a butterfly just, just barely flying. You just can barely feel it. And then other days, it might feel like an elephant sitting in your chest. And that's okay. Give yourself permission to operate at the capacity that you can handle, right? So here's another permission slip. You don't have to decorate if you're not up to it. You don't have to bake. You don't have to host. You don't have to pretend. I'm giving you permission to leave your traditions in storage this year if you have to, right? Because your heart, your emotional well-being is more important than your holiday checklist this year. And I'm not saying don't celebrate, but what I am saying is give yourself permission to feel how you feel. Right? Because it can be hard when we are socializing during the holidays, right? And sometimes we have these encounters when people are really, really well-meaning, but sometimes their words hurt, right? They're in a better place. God needed another angel. At least they're not suffering. And we hear all of those things, but a lot of times those things make us feel more alone, right? Because although those things may be true, I miss my loved one, right? And sometimes we don't even need answers. We just need somebody to be present with us. We just need someone to hold space with us. That's really what we need. We don't need the answers. We just need presence. And an example of that is in Job 2:13. It says that his friends sat with him for 7 days, and they said nothing because they saw how great his suffering was. And sometimes that's what we need. Just to have someone to sit with us. No explaining, no fixing. Just their presence so that we know we're not alone, right? That's something we call companioning. It's not about having answers, but it's just about being with someone. Because our nervous systems need co-regulation sometimes more than they need conversation. You know, that's how it works when sometimes you have this person when you're upset, when they're around. For me, it's my husband, right? When something has upset me, just being able to be close to him helps to settle me, right? And it is important for us to be able to regulate ourselves. But it's okay to have someone to lean on when you need it. We're not meant to be isolated creatures. We were built for community and to be able to depend on each other. And it's okay for you to need someone to lean on, right? You know? And if you're the person who's supporting someone through this season, it's okay for you just to be there to hold their hand. You don't have to have all the answers. Just be there, right? And I want to pause for just a minute here and tell you that something that helped me tremendously in this season was therapy. During the holidays, the grief was louder than my traditions, right? It was louder and heavier than anything else we had going on. And I wanted to really be able to enjoy. But those first holiday seasons without my parents, they were rough. And being in therapy gave me a safe space to say the hard things, to say the things I really wanted to say, right? It helped me to understand my emotional capacity, right? And to set boundaries that I didn't even know that I could set. And it helped me create rituals and activities that actually gave me comfort. The truth is, therapy didn't make my grief go away, but it helped me carry it. And that was a tremendous gift for me, was just to be able to carry it, you know? Because sometimes we have these situations where we're not just carrying our grief, we're carrying the grief of others as well. Whether it's our immediate families, you know, parents, your husband, your wife, your children. So being able to recognize what our capacity is and when we're at our limit. And my faith is my anchor. It was then and it continues to be today. Right? Because again, it's been 5 years since mommy passed and 10 since daddy passed. And my faith, I found permission, right, to mourn. Again, we can go back to Ecclesiastes where it tells us there's a time, right? And my prayer life became the place where I could be honest with God. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not trying to be polished. I tell him just what it is, right? Because he's my heavenly father, I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to tell him the issues of my heart, right? And my faith community plays a tremendous role too, because they remind me that I'm not alone on this journey, right? Because healing doesn't mean that we're forgetting. It doesn't mean that we'll forget. It doesn't mean that these people are no longer significant in our lives. It means that we're able to hold it, right? And our faith gives us the language and presence and hope when nothing else seems to make sense. I know, because there will be days when nothing seems to make sense, right? There will be days when you're just holding on by a thread. And we're human, right? And sometimes when we're grieving, we behave in ways that we don't normally behave. things that we're normally able to let roll off of our backs don't roll off anymore. And sometimes folks don't mean harm and they cause harm and we respond, right? So I want to give you another permission slip. It's okay to take a step back and to walk away from those types of situations, right? You're allowed to take a bathroom break, to have a friend to call you with an emergency if necessary, right? You don't have to pretend like it's okay. You're allowed to take a step back if you need to. You're allowed to excuse yourself, to protect your peace, your emotional well being. Sometimes it's necessary and it doesn't make you rude. You're human, right? And something else that happens when we're navigating the holiday season is what we call an emotional ambush, right? It's when grief catches you off guard. You were having a moment where you thought you were okay, and then something happened and you realized you weren't. Grief showed up uninvited, right? The year daddy passed, that happened when I was making the list for the holiday baking, because that's my job in the family. I do all the baking, right? And so my daddy's favorite was $1 million pound cake and peanut butter cookies, because I make these things from scratch. And the year daddy died, I was sitting there making my list. And as I started to write out the list for his ingredients, I realized that he wasn't going to be here to eat them. And that's how ambush grief works, right? It don't wait to be invited in, it just shows up. Right? And unfortunately, that's just how our bodies work sometimes. Because grief lives in our memory, right? Our bodies remember. And our brains look for patterns. And when it finds one, especially one tied to our loved one, we're pulled under before we even realize it. You're not crazy. It's normal. Again, it makes you human. Like I said, grief is the price we pay for being able to love someone. I remember the first time I heard that statement, and it stuck with me, because that is very literally the truth, right? Grief is the evidence that love lived here, that it lives here, because just because they're gone in the natural doesn't mean that my love for them no longer exists. The amazing thing about love is that it transcends time and space, right? So, yeah, it's okay. So, here's another permission slip. When you get ambushed by grief in the middle of making that grocery list, or putting up the tree, or decorating the house, you have permission to put it to the side, right? You have permission to stop for the day and do it later. And it's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. Show yourself the same grace that you so freely give to everyone else. You don't have to perform. right? Your presence is more than enough, right? Because as time goes on, you may have to make some changes, right? To the way you do things. Just learning to navigate your new normal. And that's okay. We adapt, right? And sometimes though that those adaptations, they stay with us. You know, for me, it was the Christmas tree during Thanksgiving weekend. I had a couple of years there where the tree didn't go up for Thanksgiving weekend. Year two, it did at least go up, right? So I made progress. It's just not necessarily Thanksgiving weekend. And that's okay. It's wise to know and to recognize when you've reached your limit, right? You know, Romans 12:2 tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And sometimes that looks like transformation means that we don't go back to the way things were. Sometimes becoming someone entirely new is necessary, right? Because as we get information, we're able to adapt. We're able to change according to the information that we have. And you have permission to do that, right? Because sometimes our bodies know what we need before we do. Because grief rewires our brains, right? And it develops systems to protect us. Isn't God amazing that He created us that way? That our brains will protect us without us having to do the work to do it. But our nervous systems take care of us automatically when we need it. I honor that and I encourage you to do the same thing. You know, during the holiday season, sometimes you have to release the pressure of being healed and being better by now. Because a lot of times we feel like I should be over this by now, right? And we keep waiting for this perfect moment when all is right in the world to be able to get back to normal. But healing is an ongoing process, right? And sometimes healing looks like knowing that I don't have the capacity to be at this family function today. That's using wisdom, right? Sometimes healing shows up in knowing your limitations, right? And that's enough, right? And here's the thing, as we transition through these different seasons, you know, we learn that we are able to comfort others with the comfort that we've received, right? We're able to help other people get through their grief seasons. That's how we came to be with these permission slips today. These permission slips that I'm sharing with you today, I first wrote them for myself. Therapy helped me with that. And at some point, you may have to give someone a permission slip, right? Because your grief story matters. What you've been through may be a blessing to someone else at some point. Because this isn't just about surviving. It's about being able to thrive and being able to pave the way for others. Right? And so before we leave today, I want to write you a few more permission slips. You have permission to eat dinner in the car if you need to play different music if you need to. You have permission not to go to the family dinner, right? You have permission to cry in the middle of grace. Sometimes it happens, right? You have permission to find moments of joy without guilt. And most of all, you have permission to be exactly where you are in your journey. Not where everyone else expects you to be, not where you used to be, but right here in this space at this time. Walking in your truth, walking in your healing, right? You still belong, right? The holiday seasons are still yours. The joy that comes with it, they're still yours. And you grieving doesn't disqualify you from being able to have those things. It may just mean that you have to navigate it differently, and that's okay. Right? That is more than enough. And so until next time, keep choosing healing, keep choosing joy, and remember, you have permission. I love y'all. Bye.